We are live, college football preview show, the degenerate special, so to speak, with Ralph Michaels and Rob Veno. I am Drew Martin, sportsmemo.com, wagertalk.com. Everybody in the chat box, welcome in, fire away any questions you got. Robbie Veno, the mastermind of this show, welcome in, man. Happy Tuesday morning to you.
Happy Tuesday to you, Drew. Afternoon on my coast, but I know morning on the other side. So happy Tuesday morning. I heard you saying that you were watching some Korean baseball last night. Did you cash a ticket?
I did, man. I'm 1-0 in the Korean baseball organization, so really excited about it, Robbie. Did you catch any of that game? I
caught like only the first couple innings and then let it go from there. I looked at the results this morning of all the games.
Yeah, I found it pretty exciting. It was a good league. Obviously the sport of baseball is back, which is a good thing, and no fans in the stands, but real baseball being played, stuff you can bet on. So I definitely recommend it. And it looks like 5:30 a.m. Eastern time is going to be the first pitch for a lot of the nights in the Korean baseball league. We also got Ralph Michaels here, wagertalk.com. Ralph, you feeling all right this morning, man?
Hey, happy Cinco de Mayo, guys.
There you go.
Same to you, man.
Let's not forget it's the tequila holiday. So, hanging in, ready to talk about these exciting teams.
Really, it is the degenerate special. We got New Mexico, Old Dominion, and Rutgers to break down here, guys. And I guess just in ABC order, we could start off with the Lobos. Of course, in the Mountain West, 2-10 last year. They did give up almost 450 points, 0-7 away from home, 0-8 in the Mountain West Conference. Actually, every team we're talking about today, all three teams, winless in conference. So speaks to the kind of the talent that these new coaches are taking on here. Danny Gonzalez, the old defensive coordinator at Arizona State, steps in. Rocky Long is his defensive coordinator, I believe. I thought that was an interesting choice here, Ralph. In looking at angles where they could be successful, because obviously all three of these teams we're going to talk about today, Ralph, it's kind of, you struggle to find positives here. One of the positives with the Lobos, Ralph, one, they're starting from 2-10. They don't have to get a lot of wins to hit their season win total over, possibly to make a bowl. I mean, that's a real reach here, Ralph. But one of the positives, UMass, New Mexico State, Idaho State, and San Jose State all on the schedule. That's 4 games where they don't have to improve all that much to be at least competitive in those 4. What's your overall view here of the Lobos this upcoming season, man?
Well, I'm sure Rob will talk about this more, but if you said to me, you can have $1.1 million, go out and find a head coach in the DC, and you come up with Danny Gonzalez and Brady Hoke, it's the best hire in all of college football. Rocky Long. Brady Hoke offered Rocky Long. Rocky Long just had too much time commitment. Brady Hoke offered him the DC job at San Diego State. He said no. And then what happens? His alumni allegiances come out. Of course, he played there. He coached there for all these years. Danny Gonzalez, of course, played there. Their DC was a coach there. So they really kept it into the Lobo family. I look at New Mexico, and again, I'm one to go back and look at what happened last year. Well, they had 10.6 returning starters last year. They were minus 91 yards per game in conference play. That was number 107 in the league. So they have a lot of room to make up. This year, they only have 12 returning starters, 8 on offense, 4 on the defensive side. That's where Rocky Long's expertise will have to pick up some of the gap. But I look at New Mexico, and you talked about their win total, and you said it was 4?
I got the fact that I believe they have 4 winnable games here, Ralph.
Okay. I have them at 4. I have them at 3.65. Now, you do have to remember when you're looking at New Mexico, they're one of only 2 teams that play 13 games this year because of their road game at Hawaii. That, of course, is factored in. But I have them, you talk about San Jose State. I have them as a 6-point dog against San Jose State. And I have them a 7-point dog against Nevada. So I only have them with 2 true winnable games. A double-digit favorite against Idaho State, a double-digit favorite against UMass, and they're going to be a pick 'em or a dog in every other game, with New Mexico State being the pick 'em range. So for me, I would actually lean under. You're going from that option offense that they did for so long. This is going to be more of a, they're going to spread it out. They had a lot of starts from their seniors last year. 79.5% of their starts were by upperclassmen. That's going to be tough to bounce back from. And just the wrinkles in. Now, I believe New Mexico is one of only a handful of teams that got in every spring practice and had their spring game. So that's a huge advantage moving forward when, they knew who their quarterback was. Tutu threw the ball 18 times in their spring scrimmage. Hall threw the ball 22 times. So they have the battle between those two at quarterback.
I like it. Great stat there, Ralph. I think that's going to matter a lot this year. So got in every spring practice this year, one of only a few teams here. Robbie, we just heard Ralph's thoughts here on New Mexico. What are your overall thoughts on the Lobos? I mean, with the coaching change, and like Ralph talked about, with their schedule, it's not like they have to overcome too much, because they got 4 games there that are winnable, where they don't have to be all that much better than last year, where they did fall short of their season win total.
Yeah, they really don't, Drew. Real quick, too, I'll go and double check. I had them as getting in 8 practices before the cancellation. I don't have them getting in the full 15, but I'll go back and check that. Okay. Let's go through the evolution of this offense, though, Drew. You and I talked a little bit about Bob Davie and his desperation to hang on to his job and all the changes they were making last year, right? There were some allegations against him, and he was hanging on by a thread. But this is going to be the 4th offensive coordinator in the last 4 years. Offensive coordinator here this year will be Derek Wareheim, comes over from Texas. But let's go back to 2017 when they fired Bob DeBest. Bob DeBest had run that option offense, pistol option offense that Ralph talked about for 6 years, gets fired. They bring in Calvin McGee from Arizona, a Rich Rodriguez disciple. Basically, what they wanted to do was add a little bit more tempo and help increase the passing game. Really, out 3 quarterbacks there, Tuioti, Sharon Jones, a Tennessee commit in the beginning, a pretty talented kid, and Colton Gerhardt, a guy who was essentially a running back at quarterback. That didn't pan out. They go out and they hire Joe Daly from Liberty last year, again, looking to improve the downfield passing game, add a few spread principles. Again, didn't work out. They started last year, guys, with a redshirt sophomore quarterback named Brant Hughes, who threw for 229 yards, got hurt in the game, and had to take a medical redshirt. Then came again Tuioti, Jones, Trey Hall, a redshirt freshman. There's an assortment of quarterback problems for this team the last couple of years. We'll see if they can straighten it out. To Ralph's point about what they'll do on offense this year, it's going to be a no-huddle spread. Will it have Tom Herman influence? I mean, Wareheim spent the last 3 years there as either an offensive line coach or tight ends coach, and in 2 years both. Maybe that power spread, or at least attributed to Urban Meyer, will have some influence here. But I think that most notably what Danny Gonzalez said was, this is a grassroots effort, and it's going to lead me to a question to both of you guys here in a second. But Danny Gonzalez took placed more emphasis on conditioning and the drills that they ran during the spring, and a lot of the players were not used to it, guys. They openly said they felt productive, but weren't used to that type of tempo, weren't used to that type of on-field practice. And Gonzalez actually said at the end of the spring, when they had to shut it down, that he thinks they still have where that is concerned. The defense I won't go over very much at all because Ralph just hit on it. Rocky Long is a slam dunk hire. 19 days after he retires from SDSU, he accepts this job. The good news is this team was a 3-3-5 defense. Long coach is 3-3-5. Now his is a little bit different, and there's some playbook to learn, but it's mostly, again, a grassroots effort to change the culture here. Here's the question, guys. In this long layoff, and we don't blanket statement anything, but with this long coronavirus layoff, it might be a little easier, in my opinion, and I'll listen for you guys, to have the players get more used to conditioning and culture change than it would be if they had to relearn an entire playbook. We've talked a lot about teams that have to learn new systems are going to be in trouble. Here, they're not really learning a new system as far as defense is concerned. They're just trying to get grassroots up. Maybe New Mexico's in a little better shape than some other teams with 8 practices and going more through a culture change than a defensive overhaul. I know the offensive side is going to be different, but what do you guys think as far as that's concerned?
Well, Robbie, I think New Mexico gets so overlooked. We talk about it at the Pit on occasions, their basketball program. But, very few people realize that Albuquerque's 5,300 feet. It's higher than Colorado State. It's higher than Colorado. It's a mile high. And they don't seem to have, they're not the better conditioned team in there where you would be able to take advantage. So obviously Gonzalez has that goal to make it where, hey, people are sucking wind up here and having issues with altitude when they come visit us. It's never been the issue because they've been the inferior team for so many seasons.
In Ralph, in terms of highest elevation Division I college football teams, I believe isn't it either second or third behind Wyoming and maybe Air Force?
Wyoming's 7,000, so Wyoming's a whole different piece. Yeah, it very well could be. I know Wyoming is 7,000 something, so there's nothing clear. I don't know where the other mountain teams are, so clearly it's 5,300 feet. So, I know it's in the top 5 for sure.
Yeah. Either way, it definitely is a home field advantage when that place gets rocking. And back years past, they used to have a pretty good turnout, and then Bob Davie kind of took over, and we know the history there. It didn't end well for the Bob Davie administration. But Ralph, you bring up a point here. I want to get Rob's opinion and also yours, Ralph. But Robbie, when Ralph was talking about, last year they played a lot of seniors, it's going to be tough. Sometimes when looking at a team that struggles in college football and they lose a lot of their starters, I don't always handicap that as necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, that they were kind of bad and you just kind of regroup ups that are actually a little bit more talented. Do you ever have that view?
In this case, Drew, they've got 34 seniors back. Gonzalez was quick to point that out. Now, they might not have had a bulk amount of time, but a direct quote from him, we're going to go as they go. If they become leaders and it's not the coaches leading, we'll have a chance to be competitive. So he's leaning a lot on these 34 returning seniors. He's leaning a lot. It almost gives Tuioti the opportunity to be the starting quarterback here. He's got a built-in edge because he is the senior. And that's one of the guys Gonzalez pointed out here. There may be more talented kids underneath him, but maybe because he's the senior and this new regime is looking for leadership and accountability, which maybe wasn't there in the past. That's something that he's very, very placing a lot of emphasis on this time around is these 34 seniors to do the job and lead the team.
Okay.
They did the right thing. New Mexico's going to be last in the conference in recruiting every year. Let's face it. Of all the other teams in the Mountain West, Hawaii is usually the only other team down in the 110s. And what they decided to do was let's go all in. Let's have a New Mexico guy as the head coach, a New Mexico guy as the OC, a New Mexico guy as the DC. That's what Rocky Long built it on. They got the bowls. I went back to look. Since 1962, New Mexico's been in 8 bowls. 5 of those were the last 7 years of Rocky Long's tenure. So really in 58 years, they've only been to a bowl 3 times without Rocky Long as being on the coaching staff. So, building in, trying to keep the few players that are talent-wise there, try to steal a few players from what you got, and you're going to be New Mexico. And let's face it, New Mexico is one of those programs that it would take a miracle for them to win the Mountain West. The best they're going to 8 or a 9 win team, and that's really what you have, to be honest with you, with the Lobos as far as football is concerned.
Absolutely, Ralph. No disagreements here, man. I mean, but I do think, and we've seen it in the past with this program, Ralph, where they can be a consistent bowl program. They kind of had, I guess, a little bit of a gimmicky offense not too long ago. But overall, I could see them making bowl after bowl if they get a good head coaching staff or a good coaching staff in there. They've had enough talent in the past, Ralph.
Yeah, well, their key is going to be turnovers. We know the defense is going to keep them in the game, not turn the ball over. I expect this team to go to a total under team. This team has been an over team the last couple years. At home, they went 4-1 over last year. On the road, they went 1-5 over under. At home, they pushed the tempo on offense, and their defense wasn't very good. If their defense improves and if their offense keeps them in game, I expect them, even though they're going to pass more, which you would think is going to be an over offense, I think they still run the ball enough, and you could be a no-huddle offense and not be up-tempo by just letting the clock run. You see those sugar huddles and you watch the clock run down, and so there's a difference there. There's two different thoughts. A no-huddle doesn't mean fast-paced. It just means the defense a chance to huddle if you think you could find advantages on the offensive schemes.
And Robbie, any clue? Go ahead, Robbie.
To that last point, Gonzalez came out and said that they're going to be a multi-tempo team. They'll be everything from control clock, which would indicate running offense and play defense, to high octane, which may mean we'll go to that if we're behind in the fourth quarter. So I totally agree with the take on unders here. New Mexico may take a drastic switch in their point totals as far as what the results are. Let's hope that the bookmakers don't adjust them too far downward.
All right, guys. And guys, just a reminder here, this is the college football preview show each and every Tuesday here on the Sports Memo and YouTube, and the Wager Talk YouTube also streamed on Twitter as well. So each and every Tuesday, you can join us in the live chat, ask any questions on Twitter as well, at Rob Veno Sports, at Cal Sports LV for Ralph Michaels there, and at Drew Martin Betts. Love to hear any questions, any thoughts on the show. But come join us each and every Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We got Old Dominion up next, guys, from Conference USA. 1-11 last year. Their season win total set at 3, -140 to the under. Couple stats here: 0-8 in Conference USA. Like we said, winless for all of these teams in conference. 1-11 straight up last year. Ralph, one thing I noticed here with ODU, man, they struggled offensively. Under 200 points scored for the total in last year. Really, really tough to watch this team offensively. You think they can improve under the new head coach this year?
Well, the old adage is if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. And Old Dominion had 5 quarterbacks. So that shows you, where they were. They're a team, I think 4 or 5 quarterbacks combined for a 5-12 ratio. So if you're going through a season in college football and you're not an option team and you have 5 quarterback passes, you certainly have some issues. The one thing I will say about Old DU is this. Rick Rainey comes in, last 6 years at Penn State. His assistant, his backup assistant, he brought in as his old C. Someone that he knew at his Kansas State coaching days comes in as his DC. So he's bringing in family and friends as well to run the offense. And I look at ODU and I look, and this is a team where I could see a pattern. And yes, they had an 0-8 season and they were minus 140 yards per game in conference play, and they only went 1 game. But you look at their returning starters for the past few years. And, as I pull them up, you had 14, 15, 16, and then 9 last year in their poor season. And now they have 17 back. So that's the kind of team I like that I have looking circled. Is there a reason they took a dive? Yes. One of the reasons is, remember, this team is just, 6 years old in the FBS. They set up everything they had to have some success their senior years. They did that. They had 9 and 10 wins. Then you have to start fresh again until you get those classes built. So this is now that rebuild. So this is a team that if I were a head coach, I would want to take this type of job. You're coming off a 1-win season. You have 17 returning starters. You have more talent than people believe. In fact, you are number 7 in my experience chart. You have the 7th most experience coming back. Now, you just mentioned, Drew, does bad experience coming back help your team more than fresh or new experience? Well, that's what we'll have to see. The defense wasn't bad. For as much as the defense was on the field, they were not bad. Their wide receivers are not bad. Their front 7 is back, and it was very good. Their question is this. The O-line, they have 4 starters back, but they were horrendous. And if they could find a quarterback. As far as their win total, looking at my charts, I have Old Dominion with 3.57 wins this year. They're going to be a double-digit favorite to Hampton. That's their only guaranteed win. They're going to have one pick'em game at UTS at Connecticut. They're going to be a 3.5-point dog in 10 or more games. So while it's an uphill climb as far as the win total goes, I think it's a great time to build for this year and play for next year if I were the head coach.
I like it, Ralph. Yeah, I mean, looking at their schedule, man, they got that Hampton game you talked about. One problem, though, is it's at UConn, and then the very next week at UTSA, the 2 kind of winnable games back to back.
They do have a bye in between those 2. They have a bye before UTSA.
Okay, great point, because that will definitely help them. They'll likely need it if they're going to get up and over the win total of 3. But you do like it from your numbers.
Well, again, I think it's very fair, but you have those winnable games, and that's it. Because, you are a double-digit dog in 6 games, and you're a dog of 3.5 or more. So you have to get out of those gates early. You have to look at how this is the team I would wait. If one of their quarterbacks starts playing well in August and they have some quarterback play, then yes, potentially they can beat UConn and UTSA. If this is one of those times where quarterbacks are splitting reps in August and they don't know who's going to play and no one's played well, it would scare me because both of those games are on the road and they're the first 2 road games of the year. The worst thing I want to do is if they go with a young quarterback and those are the games you have to win, those are the first 2 college road games of this kid's career, that's not something I want to bet on if they're must wins for you to hit your win total. Yeah,
Ralph, great breakdown, man. And in Conference USA, Robbie, and I know you know this, the FAUs, the Louisiana Techs, the UABs of the world in Conference USA, that's likely going to be out of ODU's reach in terms of, straight up victories here. But they do have the UTSAs. They got UConn on the schedule, Hampton, like Ralph said, and their season win total is only at 3. Plus, it's a plus money towards the over here, Robbie. Any interest in betting them over, or you think it's going to be another really down year for ODU?
Yeah, well, 3 indicates a down year, right, Drew? So can they be just that one game better than 3? And, in Conference USA, it's not that difficult to fluctuate between, say 3 and 8 wins. So perhaps ODU can get there this year. I think that one thing they have in their favor is that they've brought in a very aggressive recruiting staff, and Old Dominion's in some fertile recruiting ground. And it's not like you can't recruit in that area of Virginia. Now, I know the big boys get the better talent first, but what's left over is better than what's left over in a lot of states, or better than what's best in a lot of other states. So Old Dominion, just so that you guys know, on the defensive side of the football, first of all, this past recruiting class under Ricky Ronnie was regarded one of the best ODU has ever had, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They went top heavy in defensive ends, defensive tackles, so they're looking to get bigger linemen or better linemen. Cornerbacks are a big part of this defensive scheme as well. So right off the bat, they've done real well in recruiting, or at least better than what Old Dominion generally does. And I think that can continue, which would, like you say, Drew, Florida Atlantic, Florida International, I think they could catch up geographically where they are. Certainly, if they keep talent at home, they could do that. Let's go over real quick here what they're going to do. What we're going to see is probably a lot of Penn State and a lot of Penn State Joe Moorhead. Ricky Ronnie took over Joe Moorhead's offense when he went to Mississippi State. He ran it the last couple of seasons. Kirk Campbell was the offensive analyst for Penn State the last 3 years. So what is Joe Moorhead's offense? Basically everything here, guys. You watch Penn State and you know everything derives off of the running game. And Penn State's not a team where, there's a lot of these teams that say, we focus on inside zone or we focus on outside zone. This is a team that'll be diverse. They go inside, outside. Think of Saquon Barkley. Think of Miles Sanders, what Penn State did. That's what you'll see here. The dual threat quarterback works the best, right? Trace McSorley. Last year, I think Sean Clifford. And even when Moorhead went to Mississippi State, last year, what did we see him do? We saw him go to a true freshman, Garrett Schrader, because of his dual threat ability. He wound up being the starter over Tommy Stevens, a guy that Moorhead was familiar with. So I think dual threat is what they'll be looking at. However, it's interesting to note that the first quarterback recruit Ronnie has to ODU is a pro-style quarterback. So who knows what he's thinking. But we know that dual threat works best here. They run a lot of RPOs. It's all based on explosive plays. Guys, just set things up to get the explosive play downfield. And the tight end is included in this offense. So there's a lot of variations to this offense, which once they learn it, I think will give CUSA teams fits. They're not known for being great defensive teams anyway. Let's flip the page here real quick and look at the defensive side of the football where Blake Seiler comes in. This, to me, is really interesting. Ralph pointed out that Ricky Ronnie keeps it all in the family. Obviously, he's got past ties to Blake Seiler. They've worked together. They've known each other for a while. It dates back to K-State. It's the third defensive coordinator in 3 years. I don't know if that matters much. Seiler's going to be your game day play caller, Drew. I know you like it when the head coaches let the coordinators call the plays. That's what we're doing here. We're letting the coordinators call the plays. The interesting part is in the system here. Last year Blake Seiler went to West Virginia, and West Virginia converted from a 4-2-5 to a 3-4 with a hybrid defensive end, offensive linebacker called bandit. A lot of teams play this nowadays. He was part of that switch as inside linebackers coach. At the same time that they were going through that switch, Old Dominion last year was doing the same thing. 4-2-5 to a 3-4, and they both call the hybrid defensive end outside linebacker bandit. It's a bandit position. Therefore, terminology here is not going to be tweaked that much. Seiler stepping into a system that he was part of last year. The personnel gets to be in the second season of the same system, which will be a help. I think a lot of things work for Old Dominion, here on the defensive side of the football. Like I mentioned, the recruiting class was really strong. They may play some young guys, but I think Old Dominion might get better sooner rather than later. Now, they had no practices, Drew. That obviously is a setback. No practices in the spring.
Robbie, you bring up the go ahead, Ralph.
Couple points I just wanted to add. Rick Rainey is 39 years old. He is the oldest coach on the staff. This is by far the youngest coaching staff in college football. Their average age, 31.4 years old. So obviously, they're going to get some opportunity to build. Rob, you talked about the best recruiting class ever. I do want to put it in perspective. There were 130 teams. Last year, Old Dominion was 117. This year, they were 94. So 94 is the best. While it's a huge improvement, we're not talking four-star talent yet. It's just an upgrade for what ODU is used to getting. So 94 gets you in the perspective. To put it in perspective in the CUSA, the top team in recruiting this year in CUSA was North Texas. They were number 68. So when you're a CUSA team, you're in that 70 to 110 range. So if they can get that 90 down to 80s again next year, and then they're one of the top 4 or 5 teams recruiting, that's where I think they start getting caught up. And Drew, we talked about their win total. I was just taking some notes down. They have to do it in their first 6 games. In their final 6 games, they're a double-digit dog in all 6. All 6 teams went to bowls, and the average line for their last 6 games in my database, 16.8 points per game.
That's going to be a rough road there, Ralph. I don't know, man. That's a tough one. But, hey, I love the stats you said about the average age of their coaching staff, just 31 years old. That's a hard thing to believe, with the head coach being the oldest just at 39. So no coaches at the age of 40 or above. Ralph, do you view that as a good thing, or is this getting a little bit too young here, man?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of, having Kurt Campbell come in, who was a quarterback's assistant. He's called plays in one game. He was an interim OC, but you have to take it for what it's worth. There's a lot of people that have proved me wrong that, the success they can have. So I am one that I'll have my opinion on it. I'll adjust my line. But I am one to very quick adjust if I'm wrong. So I have my preseason opinions down, but they are not set in stone. I have a lot of opinions set in stone when you have good starters back, the units that are back. But when people are bringing coaches that I know nothing of, I don't be able to pretend to evaluate their talents. So I take it with a grain of salt, put my initial thoughts down, but quickly will change it after the first few games if I was proven wrong.
Yeah, Robbie, I'm interested in your kind of opinion on that as well, man, because this average age of head coaches, we kind of saw it last year, or even the last couple years, where when older head coaches got hired, they actually had some success, man. And I think it kind of does point to something, to where younger kind of college athletes do relate pretty well to, you're over the age of 50, let's say, rather than just the whole coaching staff, man. 31 years as an average age. I don't know, man. I think we're almost getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves, just concentrating on recruiting. If this starts to go downhill here, there's not a lot of experience there at the coaching angle. How do you feel about this young of an age at the head coaching?
Yeah, it is interesting, Drew. I think there's certain places where you can get away with it. I also think that if you look at, and we've talked about a few of them, if you look at coaches who are not head coaches, the head coach here is almost 40, but the average age of the staff is 31. Okay. You take a look at some of the offensive coordinators that are known as the brilliant minds in college football right now, and these guys are young. We just talked about Kenny Dillingham, who was at Auburn last year, who's not even 30 years old yet he's one of the highest rated offensive coordinators in the country. We'll talk about one in a second here when we get to Rutgers. Sean Gleason has parlayed Princeton into Oklahoma State, and now the offensive coordinator, or Greg Schiano at Rutgers, another brilliant young mind. So I think in the coordinator positions, maybe age, because of the new wave of offense, isn't as important. But head coaching wise, you do need some direction. Good thing Ronnie's 40 years old here, but still, he's had no experience leading a team. I think you can get away with it in some places. Maybe ODU is one. Conference USA, maybe a conference where you can get away with it. But certainly we can't blanket statement that.
Good stuff, guys, here on New Mexico and ODU. We do have Rutgers up next. Do want to remind everybody we do have the college football all-access layaway plan at Sports Memo and Wager Talk for just $99. You can lock in college football for the season and lay away the rest of the price until the start of the NFL preseason. So check that out at both Wager Talk and Sports Memo. Also remember, guys, on Twitter, at Rob Veno Sports, at Cal Sports LV, and at Drew Martin Betts. Feel free to ask any questions. We got a question here in the chat box about ties with season win totals. We had a question yesterday, and I misread it to Teddy. So it's from David. Appreciate the question here, David. And I actually don't know the answer to this, guys. I'm interested in your guys' opinion here. For NFL season win totals and also college football season win totals, Ralph, is a tie considered a loss? Not necessarily in match play, but for the season win totals. Do you know that, Ralph?
Well, in college football, it's not relevant with the overtime, but in NFL, it is a loss because you are betting on the wins. You are not betting on the losses. You are betting on 5 wins, and if they are 5, 10-1, they only have 5 wins. Now, if a casino was more consumer friendly, you would be betting on the losses where a tie wouldn't hurt you. But yes, a tie in the NFL is just like a loss because you are betting on 5 wins in the NFL. And if you have a tie, you still only have 5 wins. Your record would be 5-10-1.
Okay. Yep. That's what I thought. So, it's not necessarily helping or hurting. I mean, if you're on the under, it helps you, right, Ralph?
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you're good point. The way he put it, I was slanting it towards the over where it hurts an over better, but obviously a tie does help an under better as well because they do not get the win.
Okay. And we also have Spurman in here. What's up, Spurman? Always love your comments. Will we be reviewing any top 100 ranked teams or teams in Power 5 conferences? I don't think he was liking the whole New Mexico ODU. Rutgers
Did he miss last week? It was the SEC special.
Yeah, no. And we've had
mistake.
Yeah, we've had a couple good ones here. It actually doesn't have anything to do with ranked teams, Spurman. We're going out the gate here, going after the teams that have had coaching changes. So that's what we're doing here, and it just kind of lined up with New Mexico, Old Dominion, and Rutgers with our degenerate special college football edition on today's show. And guys, last, possibly least here, we got the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, 2.5 their season win total, -155 juice towards the under. So it's kind of a 2.5 here range. 2-10 last year, 0-9 in Big Ten play, only 159 points scored. I don't have the numbers in front of me, Ralph. If you want to start us off, that might be the lowest offensive production in terms of scoring in the whole country. They were only ATS last year, and a terrible profile here, Ralph. They limped into the end of the season. Take out the UMass game, they lost a number of games down the stretch, man. So Rutgers, you're kind of almost, I wonder if you're catching a falling knife looking to bet them out the gate here. But heck, it's only 2.5 wins for a season win total. In Big Ten play, though, different from New Mexico and ODU, where it's a little bit easier to kind of stack up some wins here. Rutgers is kind of punching up in class, man. Any interest in getting in bed with Rutgers this upcoming season?
Oh, I'm not interested, but if I had a bet, I would be betting the under. No question.
Okay.
And this isn't 1 or 2 years. I tweeted something out when I was prepping for the show, Drew. And since 2016 season, in the last 4 seasons, only 4 teams in college football have been shut out more than twice in the last 4 years total. UTEP 3 times, Kent State 3 times, Akron 4 times, Rutgers 10 times. Rutgers has been shut out 10 times in the last 4 years. So let's put that in perspective. Now, you look at their win total. I have them as a 3.5-point dog or more in 11 of their 12 games. I have them as a double-digit dog in 9 of their 12. I have them favored over only once. That is the opener in Monmouth when they're going to be, I have them as a 6.4-point favorite. Now, we know an 0-9 record doesn't always mean 0-9. It could mean you had a lot of bad breaks. But when you're 0-9 and you're minus 241 yards per game, that was the worst in college football in conference play. When you're 0-9 and you were outscored by 33.7 yards in conference play, that was the worst in conference play. You have so much to catch up to the next worst guy in your conference that, I think they have a long way to go. Now, they've had 1 road win in 4 years. That was in Illinois back in 2017. If you can't win on the road, that's a big deal. So, I look at Rutgers last year, they had 12.5 returning starters. This year they have 17. So again, that number is a positive. But, this was an offense that just tried to survive last year. They started off with a pro attack. They ended up having to run the option because they went through so many quarterbacks and had to just find someone that could run the plays to survive. So, I look at it, and Rob's throwing out some numbers in the last few teams we've talked about, I think he said Old Dominion's had 3 different OCs the last 3 years. How about this number? Rutgers has had 12 different DCs in the last 12 years. OCs, excuse me. 12 different OCs in 12 years. I don't think there's a number like that out there in college football. Greg Schiano, can he bring back the magic? He did it once. I will say this. He has the ability to steal a few big recruits. You know, they were number 64 recruiting this year. That was ahead of Illinois. That was just behind Indiana. And so it's not last in the Big Ten. He can turn big talent into NFL people again. Granted, he was at Ohio State when he did it as the DC, but you could bring some players in and say, listen, we can get you drafted if you come stay home with us. You know, his hires are guys that were born and raised in Rutgers as well, so he wanted to stay in state, but I think they got a long way to go, and I'd be betting under 2.5. I would be betting under 2. I would prefer to bet under 2 with juice on my side than the 2.5 with the negative juice.
Man, that confident and just only the Monmouth game, you're right. I mean, outside of that, Syracuse and all that, you know, Temple, but I'm with you, Ralph. It's not like I would favor Rutgers over any of those teams. Robbie, your overall view on the Scarlet Knights, man, just a 2-10 campaign last year. What are you thinking with the new administration?
Yeah, I mean, that schedule, like you guys said, it's pretty tough. And the fact that Lovie Smith seems to have Illinois on the upswing here. I mean, usually you could count on maybe beating Illinois, but I don't know that Rutgers can do that here. Chris Ash was a very capable head coach and leader. It just shows you the difficulty in being at Rutgers and being in the Big Ten, and in specific, the Big Ten East. And you're just not going to get past Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Michigan State's a little bit falling right now, but they're likely to climb back at some point in time, whether it be this year or next year. It's a difficult situation. Hiring Greg Schiano is a plus. Like Ralph said, the potential there to maybe steal an extra recruit, that might help. Rutgers has always talked about keeping in-state talent home. Never seemed to do it. New Jersey gets raided by all the surrounding states. See if Schiano can keep some there. He's got 2 new coordinators. Ralph said 12 OCs in 12 years. The 12th is Sean Gleason. Just talked about him a little bit. He's a guy who was a mastermind, a young guy, offensive whiz at Princeton, led some highly potent offenses at Princeton. Mike Gundy caught sight of him, brought him to Oklahoma State, where he was last year. Oklahoma State played well offensively last year, despite a couple of injuries and a new quarterback. And now he's here. Can he make a difference, Drew, offensively? I think that the 159-point total that you talked about earlier from Rutgers in 2019 can only be improved upon. I mean, the quarterback situation was brutal. Remember, they started with McLean Carter, who was a transfer from Texas Tech, a very good passer of the football, highly thought of. He gets hurt. They bring in their sophomore, big recruit from New Jersey that they had as a freshman, now sophomore Arthur Sikowski. He gets hurt. And they wind up with a 6'3", 232-pound quarterback that runs the football double-digit times the rest of the year. That's all they did, run the quarterback. They get almost 140 carries in 8 games. Now they're going to go to a spread offense under Gleason, which, what he's known for the most, guys, I'll cut to the chase here, is these formations that he comes up with. Because when we say spread, it all sounds the same. I guess the difference is in how you present it with all the bells and whistles. This guy will run everything, RPOs, jet sweeps, regular running game, deep passing game, doesn't matter. But he does it in such a way that his ex-head coach, a guy he worked for, Bob Serace, said, here's a quote from him. He said he would sit in the meeting room, and he said, it may look like, what the heck is this? But when you're sitting in the staff room, all of a sudden everything is being blocked. There's a gap, there's an alley, there's space. So whatever he designs, however he presents it on the field, it's been working, and we'll see if it works against Big Ten defenses. And more than that, we'll see how quickly Rutgers' offensive personnel can catch on to all of this, because one of the hardest things to do is when you thicken the playbook with formation and motions and stuff like that, it's harder to learn. So we'll see. He's a talented guy. He's in a tough situation, but Schiano brought him here for a reason. He brings in defensive coordinator Rob Smith, again, a familiarity hire. I don't know that I'm so high on Rob Smith. He's had some defensive stops that weren't very good at all, if you go through his bio and his history. But when he's been with Greg Schiano, they've been aligned, and he's been good. So we'll see if they can do it again. It's going to be a 4-3 defense. Again, when we talk about 4-3s, guys, in college football, we usually only look at the SEC or the Big Ten schools that are powerful because they have the ability to recruit 8 or 9 defensive linemen. Can you do that at Rutgers? I'm not sure. Schiano's, been labeled or listed as one of the founders of the Tampa 2 defense. He was with Lovie Smith back when that was invented, and he still runs it basically from this 4-3 formation. He's added a couple of things. He's been a defensive coordinator as recently as 2016 at Ohio State. He was really successful. So it'll probably be mostly his defense. Smith is brought in because he knows his defense. The better part of the 2 units for Rutgers has been the defense the last few years, certainly not the offense. It's a major rebuild. I don't know that I would bet over 2.5 looking at that schedule, Drew. They're probably in for a long haul here, and maybe down the road it gets a little better, but I don't know. They're at such a disadvantage right now in that conference. I'd talk differently about them if they were in CUSA with Old Dominion, but they're not. So 2.5 wins seems like a mountain.
Yeah, and Scott throws in the chat box here, Schiano won 3 games total in his first 2 years at Rutgers in the first stint. And it speaks to Schiano in his first time around. I mean, he did a great job building the program, and I'm guessing he did pretty well in New Jersey. I know for a fact because I was in high school at the time. He recruited the heck out of Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach counties down in South Florida. His heritage is there at being assistant coach for Miami. He pulled a lot of South Florida talent up to New Jersey. That, I believe, had a lot to do with their success. Actually, a kid, Ryan Hart, I backed him up in high school. He was their starting quarterback there at Rutgers, played really well. So I'm guessing he's going to do the same now coming back to Rutgers. My question to you, Ralph, is this program in Rutgers, why haven't they done better stepping up to the Big Ten recruiting-wise? I mean, maybe they have a little bit, but it really hasn't translated to wins, man. And do you think that can turn around in the future?
I don't. I just think they're overmatched. They're a small school. They're in the Northeast. It should help them with recruiting, but it's no secret where these kids are going to play. I mean, they don't want to play at Rutgers. They don't want to play for a team that's going to lose. They want to play for a team that has a potential national championship. We're seeing. I mean, you look at the 5-star recruits that go to Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. I mean, you're talking 65% of every 5-star recruit goes to 4 schools. Now add in LSU with their success. So I just think they're in a spot where, much like New Mexico, they're never going to win the division in the Big Ten. I just don't see a formula where they can win unless, maybe Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State are all on probation. But, and I don't mean to make a joke about it, but we know Rutgers was brought into the Big Ten for the New York market, for their basketball, and for all their other programs. And the football program said, yes, we'll take Rutgers football because we want to be in the New York market. Just like Maryland was for, the D.C. market. They're brought in for that D.C. TV market. So I don't think they're ever going to be more than a 7, maybe an 8, maybe a 9-win team. But that's where they are. They have to just accept it in football.
And Robbie, any thoughts on that, on why Rutgers isn't doing better since making the change to the Big Ten, man?
Well, I think the number one culprit is Penn State. I mean, Penn State has made New Jersey their personal recruiting ground, and Rutgers has to put an end to that at some point and keep some of those players. And Penn State obviously recruits nationwide, but they go into New Jersey and just thieve everything that's good. They take, and you're left with the leftovers. Right? That move, if they were still in the Big East, as Ralph mentioned, that switch from the Big East to the Big Ten might have brought him a little more money. Certainly didn't bring him any more victories as far as football is concerned. I thought you made a great point with Schiano's ties to South Florida and Florida in general, because he was there with Tony Dungy in Tampa, and he was there in Miami, of Florida as well. So he does have ties to Florida, and maybe he can bring some of that talent up north. We'll see, but it's a hard sell, Drew. I mean, they got new facilities. I believe they have new facilities, which is a help. But for a long time, they struggled facility-wise against these other Big Ten schools. And we know kids go to places nowadays for, A, the TV exposure, but B, what do you got for us to play around in as far as facilities are concerned? Rutgers catching up there. They're spending a lot of money to try and be better. We'll see if Ciano can make it happen, but they're the number one intruder onto their territory is Penn State. Until they stop them, I don't know that they'll get any better.
Hey, Drew, I will say this. I just went on 247sports.com and looked at the 2021 recruiting rankings. Obviously, Ohio State, Tennessee, North Carolina are the top three everyone's talking about. Rutgers is actually 19 for next year. Now, they're going to fall way back because they're not going to fall any five stars, but I don't know if they've ever been inside the top 20 at any point a few years out. So looking at next year, obviously, they've done a nice job recruiting for next year already. So perhaps it is a couple-year plan where they can steal some more guys for the next recruiting class and then build from that.
Okay, good point there, Ralph. And guys, we do have a couple questions here in the chat box, so we can start wrapping it up. We got David in the chat box. Question to all: how do you approach season win totals? More last year's record, or do you go each game in the schedule and handicap it as a win or a loss and then come up with your own number? That's how I do it, David. The latter, go through each and every game. Ralph, it sounds like you're the same.
Well, yeah, I have an entire database. So my database is I put in the home field edges, I put in the home field edges for the opponents, and then I put in my power rating numbers. So, as an example, for Akron, it'll tell me Akron's going to be a 4-point dog to Youngstown State. That gives them a 38% chance to win. They're going to be a 5.8-point dog to New Mexico State. That gives them a 35% chance to win. There'll be a 60-point dog to Clemson. That gives them a 0 chance to win. So you start adding all those percentages, and then you look at what that adds up to. Akron's 2.67. But then I look at how many times they're a favorite, a double-digit favorite, a single-digit favorite, a pick-em game between the threes, and then I look at where those games are and then make the best determination. So clearly it's taking your power ratings, and however you do your power ratings. If you take your power ratings from last year's numbers and make adjustments, that's fine. If you start fresh every year, that's fine. But you can't do win totals without doing all the teams, because too often you'll say, well, this is a win, and this is a potential win, and this is a potential win. Well, you can't have potential wins on both sides of the box. If you have Akron a potential win, then you can't give that potential win to Kent State, and you have to make that determination of which side you're going to give it to before you can determine what your final number is on those teams.
Yeah, and Robbie, anything to add there on making your season win totals?
I think we all generally approach it about the same way, and I think that bookmakers, when they set these numbers, approach it the same way. They go down the schedule, they get the probabilities, and then list the number. I think the only thing I can add to it, guys, is I'll generally take teams with whole numbers, and I won't look at them first. I'll look at all the teams that have halves attached, because half gives you an outcome one way or the other. And if you're betting over and you think that the half is on the low side, then makes for a good bet. If you think it's on the high side, you like the under, makes for a good bet. I'll generally look for teams with half attached. Might not look for Rutgers at 2.5 because 3 might be too high, but that's, from just a simplistic first glance look, I'll do that. I'll take teams with halves, I'll consider them, then I'll go back and look at the others because I may have a feeling on a team for a year. But we know that we're doing it all on paper. Injuries are, can't be accounted for because we don't know ahead of time. So a lot of it is guesswork. You can do your best, and I think what Ralph has going there with the probabilities certainly is as mathematically as good as you can get. And
True. Sorry. Rob, one thing I wanted to point out is, there's some times that you have some of these teams, like Tennessee a couple years ago when they had their 19 starters back and everyone was on that Tennessee bandwagon, and you see their win total go up through the summer. I learned a couple years ago, Drew, I almost find there's more value sometimes looking at season win totals that last week in August because teams become so inflated, you come back and you bet them the other way. So don't think now your season win total it moved and you lost it. Reevaluate in August when we get better information. And a lot of times a team that I thought I might bet over, I might actually be betting under because of the popularity of the team and the way it's climbed. Because we know if ESPN comes out with the team and names it, and my old boss, Phil Steele, puts them on the front of the magazine, and Joe Public starts following those teams and starts betting them up, you can find value going the other way.
Yeah, the market can shift pretty, and not necessarily pretty fast, but over the course of the whole summer, you can get a pretty wide move here. Guys, last question before we shut this down. With coaching changes, do they have players to make a turnaround immediately, or is it going to take years? This from Ryan. Ryan also throws in a good one. Schiano wanted facility upgrades guaranteed in his return. I think he got some of them, so thanks for that, Ryan. But I guess to add a little bit to Ryan's question, Ralph, starting off with you, man, how long do you look for it when a coaching change happens? Is it that year you look to be betting on that team, or is it 2, maybe 3 years down the road?
Robbie, I'm going to make a big point here, and I want to hear your answer. Coaching changes are overrated. Yes or no?
I think generally speaking, they are.
I think if you have a team that has talent and that coach left, like Appalachian State, Satterfield left, someone comes in. If you have a winning established program and your coach left to get another promotion and you have a coach taking over that program, he is just trying to steer the wheels on that program. When you're taking a program over like the 3 teams we tossed, you have a shitty program and it's going to be shitty for a few years. So a lot of times, I don't think it's a coaching change. I think it's where the coach is and the position they were taking over a team.
I like where you're going with that, Ralph. I think it depends on the situation they're overtaking there, Robbie. And then now Ryan throws in Nebraska, a good point for this too. Everybody thought Frost was going to turn it around right away. Actually, I was on the other side of that. Now he's probably going to sleep wishing he was back in Orlando. But Robbie, any closing thoughts on the coaching changes?
Yeah, I do. I treat them all situationally, Drew. I think that each one has to be evaluated on its own situation, honestly. When guys are granted and it doesn't happen very much anymore in football, but when you're granted a period of time to overhaul a program, I think that's a little different than a guy who's stepping stone to major job. You know what I mean? Those guys are more inclined to do whatever it takes to win immediately because they want to get to the big job. Whereas Schiano, I think, has got some time here from Rutgers to totally rebuild. Doesn't matter if you stink in year 1. We're going to give you 2. We're going to give you 3. Let's see if you can overhaul the entire program. But other guys that you see jumping from maybe a MAC job to a Mountain West job to a Power 5 job, those guys, I think the desperation and the immediacy to win, they sort of do whatever it takes to win. And maybe some of those are rated a little differently. But until you know coaching styles, guys, and they're as important as anything in handicapping almost every sport. Until you know what they do, what their tendencies are, I think it's hard to just judge as a blanket statement. But I could definitely see Ralph's point. A lot of these things, I think you said it last week, Ralph. You said, everything is so rosy on every coaching change when we start the year. It's like Major League Baseball opening day. Everybody thinks they're going to go to the playoffs. And some of them turn sour real quick. Whether it's the coach's fault or not, some of them do go sour real fast.
Yeah, I did I know we're running out of time, Drew. I did an article in the Playbook, Mark Lawrence's magazine, a couple years ago, and I will do it again. I will update the last couple years. But when you have a coach that takes over a program that had 4 or less wins, I think only 20% of the time they top those wins. And when you had a program that had 9 or more wins, those coaches that didn't get fired but left to move on, you had over 8 wins 78% of the time. So those numbers are out of my butt. But they were from an article I did that's a couple years old that I will recruit. But you guys will be surprised that when a coach leaves and there's a new head coach, it's an entirely different story for a coach that got fired and they had to bring in a new coach.
Awesome. I'd love to read that, Ralph. That's a great point there, man. And what, you'd post that on Wager Talk or on your
yeah, I will work on it, and I will find the old article and update it for the last couple of years as well. So I was amazed, and I'm sorry I didn't have it for this new coaches show, but talking about these bad teams and taking over, much different stories. I mean, couple teams, I think. Appalachian State, he leaves, what happens? Toledo, how many coaches have left recently, but they've still had that success? A winning program with a new coach tends to still be a winning program.
And real quick, Drew, I mean, the separation, too, has to be made between just wins straight up and point spread wins. Sometimes you go 3-8 or 3-9, but you're a 7-5 point spread team, which in our business is success from that angle. So there's so many things to throw in here, but I think we covered most of them.
Yeah. Good. For the Degenerate special show here, guys, ODU, New Mexico, and Rutgers. I thought it was great stuff from Ralph, Rob, Veno. Hey, shout out to Ski Profit. What is up, buddy? For Ski Profit at Wager Talk, also.
Razor for Ralph.
Yeah. And Ski Profit's actually on the 3 p.m. show right here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. So come back, get good in-depth analysis. Ski Profit, I believe it's Meet the Experts with Lawrence Presman. So, okay, it's How to Bet NBA. Never mind, but either way, one of the best, if not the best, NBA sports bettor in the industry. Find him at wagertalk.com, along with Ralph Michaels, where you can get the layaway plan, guys, just $99. Check it out, NFL, college football. You lock that in now, you get huge discount. Take advantage of that. Wagertalk.com with Ralph and Ski Profit. Sportsmemo.com with myself, Rob, Veno. Guys, remember, each and every Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, we're doing this college football preview show. Come back and join us in the chat box. Reach out on Twitter. Any questions? For Rob, Ralph, I am Drew. Thanks for joining us. Remember to wash your hands, and best of luck with your bets.